Okay, it's an absolute pleasure to introduce Professor Josep Call. Josep is the Bishop Wardlaw Professor at St Andrews. His research studies causal reasoning and problem solving in primates. Josep is a hugely accomplished researcher. If you're not already familiar with his work, absolutely free. He's literally written the book on primate cognition. He had a fantastic science paper that came out last year on reasoning and beliefs in primates. And if you haven't looked at that yet, I highly recommend it. It's an amazing piece of work. This is Josep's first time in Australia. So to say that we're honored to have Josep here, his first visit to Australia is an understatement. So Josep, thank you for coming down and having time to meet with us here. And please welcome Josep.
Thank you very much, Andy. It's a great, great pleasure to be here. It's not the first time, it's the second time, but that's okay. But it's the first time in Sydney. And I also want to thank my collaborators in the work that you will see today. I want to present basically what I will say today. You can find in these two papers, most of it. And I would like to talk about cumulative culture. And I would like to start with this picture. These are some people in Barcelona, and they are dancing the traditional dance in Barcelona, which is called the sardana. And the way you dance is the way you see it here, is you hold hands, the music plays, and then you dance like that, okay? And in a sense, you may think it's something kind of boring. And in fact, if you try it alone at home, it's really boring. The fun part is when you do it with others. Then it completely transforms the experience. And I show you this picture because it's humans, by doing things together, we can accomplish massive things, things that individuals alone cannot. It's not simply just about dancing together. It's also about building houses. So buildings, there you have the Cathedral of Barcelona. It's not the Sagrada Familia, that's a basilica. This is the Cathedral of Barcelona. And also together we build things like governments, we build things like institutions like marriage, etc. All these things are done together. An individual alone cannot do it. It's not only a question about doing things together, it's also doing them together over time. When we are doing the things that we do collectively, we are not just interacting with the people in this room, in the present. The ones that came before us also are there with us because we are using their knowledge to do the things that we can do today. This is cumulative culture. Not only we use what is available today, but what is available today is critically important, is critically based on the things that others before us already did. Now, when you think about this great accomplishment of the human species, you think, where does this come from? Can we find something similar in non-human animals? And you can look at these two pictures, and I'm sure you can find some similarities. We have 3 individuals here and 3 individuals here. And the kids are paying close attention to what the adults are doing. And there are also some differences. One difference, for instance, is that this chimpanzee is doing an individual activities, cracking nuts. The mom and the child are doing something together. This is something that from very early on, children like to do things together with the adults. It's part of our way of doing things together. And when you look at these pictures and you say, but well, maybe this individual is learning something of what mom is doing. This is going to be also culture, right? Because this is going to be behavior that is learned and transmitted perhaps across generations. And here is where the debate begins. Some people argue that, yes, non-human animals, chimpanzees and other animals, they have culture. Other scholars say, actually, they don't. because they are missing some of those things that are so critically important for human culture. So for an extended period of time, there was this debate between these two camps, the ones that supported animals have cultures and the ones that said, no, they actually don't. It's not what humans do. It got so bad that even some journalists wrote about it. This is a real book. It's the Chimpanzee Culture Wars, where the different opinions and positions of these people on this debate are presented. I think the war, in a sense, maybe better, the battle is over for now. I think most people now agree that yes, animals also have cultures. And I will say a bit more about what I mean by that, because this is important. But now, believe it or not, the war is not over, because that front has been exhausted, but the battle lines have moved. Now we do not fight about culture. Now the next quest is about cumulative culture. Okay, we accept that non-human animals may have culture, but what they don't have is cumulative culture. This in itself is not a bad thing. It's not simply, some people take this to mean, oh, you simply don't want animals to have what humans have. I don't see it that way. I see it as an attempt to see how much we can push the boundaries of knowledge. Can we see whether they are capable of cumulative culture? Not because we want to make humans separate and special, etc., simply because by pushing the boundaries of knowledge is one way that we have to learn. So here you have an example, cumulative cultures in maybe Japanese macaques. So what I would like to do today is 4 things, basically. First, I want to talk about definitions, because sometimes you have a debate at culture or cumulative cultures, and the things get stuck very quickly because we both can use the word culture, but we mean different things. And what that produces is a lot of smoke, but very little light. So I want to put that one aside and tell you how I am going to use the concept, what is going to be my definition for culture. With this, I'm not saying it's the only one, is the best one. I'm simply saying it's the one I will use, period. So that we can understand each other about what we are talking about, or in this case, what I will be talking about. The second thing that I would like to do is I present you a research framework that I think that we can use to study cumulative culture in animals. Many people are trying to do this now. Once it's accepted that yes, animals have cultures, now we need to see if we can find, it's the next quest, they have cumulative culture, and I'll show you some of the things that I think are crucial in this endeavor. Then I will tell you some of the things that I think have hindered and still hinder today progress in cumulative culture evolution. And finally, I will tell you about 2 model systems, very different model systems, 2 species that we are using to study culture in different ways. But the nice thing is that they are complementary ways. And that's one of the beauties of diverse intelligences. Intelligence is not singular, it's intelligence, diverse intelligences. So, first point, nested definitions. I'll talk basically about 3 concepts. Social learning, the overarching one, then culture and cumulative culture. Social learning is the more general, then we have culture. Some social learning becomes culture, and some culture can become cumulative culture. The first definition is social learning is learning about other agents or the inanimate world that is influenced by observation of or interaction with another individual or his products. When we see these things, we say there is social learning happening. Okay, so that's the definition I am using of social learning. Culture. What is culture? for me, one definition, one that I really like, but is not very, very good, is culture is what we do, with the emphasis on the we, on the group, on the collective. But this definition is very difficult to operationalize when you want to study non-human animals. So I use this other definition, which I also like, which is behavior that is socially learned by most members of a group and transmitted across generations. So that's what we consider culture. When we talk about animal cultures, most scholars, this is what they are thinking about. Most people working with animals, when they say chimpanzees have cultures, this is what they mean. And finally, cumulative culture, it's a special case of culture. And this, in cumulative culture, an innovation on a cultural behavior. So there is a behavior that is part of the cultural repertoire of the species. So an innovation on a cultural behavior that is socially learned by other group members and whose adoption improves efficiency and enables the emergence of further innovations beyond the capabilities of single individuals. This is very important. Beyond the capability of single individuals. Remember when I show you the people in Barcelona dancing? Nobody in that square could build a cathedral or could even invent the sardana, the traditional dance. Beyond the capabilities of single individuals. This will become important as we okay. What is a research framework that we think can be useful? And I will show you two examples with two species, but this can be applied more widely to other species. Let's start with what is the cumulative culture engine? It's got two parts. It's a simple engine, and it has a part that is about transmission and modification. A group has a behavior. This behavior is modified by an individual or a group of individuals. And then this modification is then learned by others and then adopted by most individuals in the group. And this process can be repeated multiple times. So it could be an iterative process. So this is essentially what is the engine of cumulative culture. Now, here I have some traits, some features of culture. Remember, it's socially learned behavior, is transmitted across generations, and is shared by most group members. This comes from the definition that I showed you earlier, but now bullet points. What does cumulative culture add to culture? Well, it adds that it's transmitted, modified, and transmitted, the cultural evolution engine. There is a notion of progress and change, minimizing cost of the previous behaviors or maximizing benefits of the new behavior. So there is a sense of progress. Now, progress doesn't necessarily mean accumulation of more stuff, as you will see in a minute, but progress in the sense of more efficient. It's important that it falls outside what is called the zone of latent solutions. What's the zone of latent solutions? This is basically the idea that individuals on their own cannot invent things that are outside the zone of latent solutions. For instance, take any human in the planet on their own, without the knowledge that has accumulated through generations, they would be absolutely incapable of inventing something as simple as a paper clip. Think about the amount of information that goes to making a paper clip. From getting all the minerals, from thinking about what are the uses of this thing, et cetera, et cetera. And finally, I think a feature that is important is that this is not, I think, a required feature, but one that I think is important. It's got to be collective. Multiple individuals contribute to it. I accept that doesn't need to be that way, but I think if it happens, it's even better. It's even more stronger form of cumulative culture. This is the cumulative culture engine presented in a different way with the notion of performance or progress or efficiency. And you see multiple groups of transmission, modification, then transmission, modification, first within the zone of latent solutions. And at some point, it can escape the zone of latent solutions. And at that point, we would say individuals on their own are unlikely to invent this behavior unless they take the knowledge, skills, abilities that others developed before them. The nomenclature, I mean, this is again something to represent the same idea in two different ways. So here what you have, A and B are individuals. A is an observer and B is a model, somebody that knows something. And what it knows is the number that you see here, a behavioral element. A observes B and then A acquires 1. So it's learned something. But now it may observe another, it may observe B again, do another thing, and then A can acquire this thing too. So not only now has one behavioral element 1, but it has a 1 and 2. And then it may observe a second individual C that is doing 3 and 4, and A also learns that. So in the end, A, by observing B and C, has learned 4 things. That's the transmission part. Now comes the modification part. Once A has these 4 elements, it can do a number of things with them. It may recombine them. Maybe it's more efficient to do things in a different order. Or it may add something new to what it learned from others. It can subtract, and this is what I was telling you earlier, that it doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to increase constantly. Sometimes progress means remove some things that are no longer needed. So the behavior looks simpler, it's got less elements, but it's more efficient. Or here represented as 7 is doing something completely different. It's not even similar to what's been done before, and I'll show you an example of this in a minute. It's a completely different behavior within limits. Okay. Why we have not been able to prove that non-human animals have cumulative culture. And in thinking about this, I'll give you 3 different reasons. First one, because for a long time, people thought imitation, one specific form of social learning, is needed for this. So cumulative culture requires imitation or some form of high fidelity copying to develop and persist. I am responsible of one of these papers, the Tenier et al. So I'm partly guilty of that, and I'm happy to admit it. I changed my mind now, and I'll tell you why. For instance, tool use. But for instance, you see, when you look at the behavior of chimpanzees using tools, it's not clear that they necessarily use imitation. They may use other different mechanisms, and this is complex behavior. Chimpanzees can be trained to do things like they do as I do, so they are capable of imitation. But believe it or not, they're not that good at it. One thing that they can do quite well is they recognize when others imitate them. So if you do this in front of an orangutan, initially you start the orangutan, the way this study is done is you sit in front of the orangutan. And then what you do is if the orangutan touches her head, you do the same. And now the orangutan scratches, you scratch. And then there are 2 things that you notice. The first thing is the orangutan is paying more and more attention. And eventually the orangutan starts to do weird stuff. You see here. So this is normal, this is normal. And then it starts to, then it goes like this, and the human. Now the orangutan is testing the human. Interestingly enough, this works only if you do exactly the same as the orangutan and at the same time, or close in time. If you do close in time something completely different, it doesn't work. Or if you do the same, but 3 seconds later, it doesn't work. So clearly the orangutan, chimpanzees, and this study was done with all of them. They can pick up when they are being imitated. But when they have to imitate something, it's really hard for them. If you want to know more about this, you can find them in our new book. Sorry, shameless infomercial. This is the new book that Andy mentioned. So you can find information about imitation in it. So these are the different social learning mechanisms. Don't worry, you don't need to learn them. All I want to say is I don't think we no longer need imitation to call it culture or cumulative culture. Any other social learning mechanisms can do the job. The second barrier is because people thought that chimpanzees are very conservative. That is, once individuals find a solution that works, they stick with it. And they have a hard time giving it up or even better alternatives. This was very popular among some primatologists, and they thought this is the reason why we don't see cumulative culture. Because once they find a solution that works, they get stuck with it. See, humans, once we have a smartphone that works, we have no problem just checking it when a new one or a better one comes along. Based on this idea of conservatism, chimpanzees would grab their phone and not let go because they are very conservative. That's a theory, and there is some work that supports this. For instance, in the wild, it's been shown that in sponging behavior, a community of chimpanzees that extracts water from crevices by chewing leaves and putting them there. If you replace the water with honey, they do the same thing. But now what happens is when this honey is very deep in the crevice and they need to use a stick, they try to use the sponge. That does not work. You can even put the stick inside the hole with honey. It's deep inside. They pull it out, they suck it, and then they drop it. And they get the sponge and try to use it. Things like this is what led researchers to believe that they are very conservative. However, there are cases where they are not so conservative, and this is a case of a study in captivity. And in this task, what the chimpanzees have to do is they use a straw to get juice. Now, when you give a straw to chimpanzees to get juice from a tube like this, what they do typically, their first approach is they don't use it as a straw. They use it as a dipping tool. They dip the straw, they pull it out, they lick it, they dip it again. And they do this multiple times. It's a solution that works. They have time, patience, they can get all the juice out. Until someone invents to use a straw as a straw by sucking on it. And then everybody or many individuals acquire that behavior. Now, this contradicts what I told you earlier about conservatism, because the previous solution was working just fine. How come they can abandon it and adopt the better solution? And this has been documented a few times, where some individuals simply, they drop the old solution and they get the new. So they thought they are conservative. I think maybe they are not as conservative as we need. Again, if you want to know about this, it's the last one, I promise you. This is the second part of this book, and it's not out yet, but it will be soon. Or our publishers will kill me. So it has to be, anyway, we talk about conservatism in that second volume. The third thing, the barriers for cumulative culture. I think previous studies have used the task that was too easy for primates. So what that does is not outside the zone of latent solutions. You give the task to the individuals. At first they struggle, but eventually they invent it. And therefore you don't need to do anything else because it's within reach of individuals. Also, the baseline period that typically was given to subjects was very short. You may have, I don't know, just a few trials, maybe a few hours. Not days, not weeks, not months, to see whether they could invent it. And that's a problem because if you don't have a good baseline, you don't know whether this task that you are giving them is within or outside their zone of latent solutions. Another thing is that some studies use too few individuals in the control group. If you have an experimental group with 15 individuals and a control group with 5, it is more likely that individuals will discover it in the experimental group because they have 3 times the number of subjects. Also, in this task, typically there was no environmental scaffolding. Very often the environment will scaffold and will guide what an individual needs to do to solve the task. None of these laboratory tasks ever use that. We want to change this. Now I'll tell you about the 2 model systems that we've been using. The first one, surprise, surprise, is chimpanzees. We've been testing chimpanzees in different ways, building on the work that others have done before us. You see, science is also cumulative, of course. And the second model, in collaboration with our colleagues, Taka Sasaki and others, we are using temothorax and try to get at the question of cumulative culture. And the interesting thing about these 2 species is they complement each other really well. Let's start with chimpanzees. Chimpanzees, we know that they have chimpanzees cultures. This is already an old paper. Now there's much more information about what chimpanzees do and the cultures that they have in the wild. It's been shown that they have different ways of using tools for multiple functions. Also, some gestures are cultural. They're specific to particular groups, etc. So this is very well known. So chimpanzees seem to be, since they have cultures, are a prime candidate to see if they have cumulative culture. And there's been studies done, for instance, by Andy Whiten and colleagues, where they tried to get at this question: could they find cases for cumulative culture? I'll give you one of the studies that they did. They use this 2-action puzzle box. And this box, there's food inside, and you can open in 2 different ways, A and B. And what they do is they take one group. Yes. You take one group, and then what you do is you give them one group you seed with one solution, one type of solution. And then you study how this is one group, another group, another group, and you see how the things are transmitted across groups. You can see if you see this purple, most of the things that you see are purple. So the purple solution is transmitting. Here, the light blue solution is seeded, and you see something very similar is the one that, so this is good news. This means that once they learn one thing, that's the one that is transmitted. The same can be done in another task, different box, different solution, the same picture arises. So here you see the blue solution, you see blue, here you see the green solution, mostly green. Now, and this is important, mostly green or mostly blue. There are some individuals that come up with the other solution. And that for the cumulative culture is a problem, because that means that that solution, even though they never saw, is within their individual capabilities. So even though this shows this is evidence of cultural transmission, it's not evidence of cumulative culture, because you've not been able to show that individuals cannot invent these solutions on their own. And you see contamination anywhere, everywhere. You see it in this group. You see contamination here. You see contamination there. there, and there. So it's everywhere. This happens because chimps are very inventive animals. And when you least expect it, they come up with a solution. In a sense, because they are so inventive, it's very hard to hit the right level of difficulty. Because if you do it too easy, they are going to invent everything on their own. And if you do it too hard, you miss it, nobody will invent anything because it's too hard. There is a very narrow, very difficult to find band, the sweet spot that is very difficult to hit, precisely because they are very inventive, but you cannot ask them to fly to the moon. That's a problem for this kind of study. Now, so we tried to do a study where we tried to fix the problems that I told you earlier. We did it with chimpanzees. And here what we had is two chimpanzee groups. They were housed at the Chimpunji Wildlife Orphanage in Zambia. And what we did is we presented them with a food dispensing box. It's similar to the one that you saw, the Whiten and colleagues box, different one. Think about it as a vending machine that produces peanuts. It's fantastic for chimps. Can you imagine? You can get these coins for free, and you can get as many peanuts as you want. So in order to get the peanuts, you need to collect the ball, you need to insert the ball into this machine, and then you need to operate it. You need to push a slot to then release the peanuts. Now, let me see, do I have it here? Yes. We provided them with this box for 3 months. We gave them no demonstration. It was sitting there for 3 months. The peanut, it was full of peanuts. They could look at it. They could salivate. And they also had these balls scattered around the box. In 3 months, nobody invented what to do with these balls to insert them in the box. And you say, oh, yeah, oh, this is fantastic. Because we could show that this behavior is outside the zone of latent solutions. There is no individual that invented that. And then we trained one demonstrator to operate this machine. And now we put this demonstrator in the group. And then we see what happens. As you can imagine, what happened, this is the box with all the peanuts. And this is the chimps looking at the peanuts from inside the box. And this is what happened. So these are, I told you, we work with 2 groups. And what you see here is, here you have the date. And here you have one inventor, another inventor there. These individuals learn from the other. And you can see this is the number of times that they successfully opened the box. You can see in this group, 4 of them acquired it during the time that we did the test. In the experiment in group 2, something similar happened. So gradually, individuals are learning to operate these by having a model. Also, because we measure who was there, who was watching, and who was near each other, you can see that the likelihood of discovering, it depends on whether you were near the demonstrator when the demonstrator was operating the box. And this happened in group 1, and this in group 2. So the idea that this is a strong evidence that there is social learning going on, together with the fact that during the baseline, nobody discovered it. So now I'm going to summarize some of the things I told you earlier and this last study. And I'm going to use this graph that I showed you before. So the Whiten study falls here. There was some transmission, but there was not beyond the zone of latent solutions. This is also true about the straw study. Yes, there was some innovation, some transmission, but it was not outside the zone of latent solutions. This one had been claimed to be outside the zone of latent solutions, but when you look closely at the control conditions, they do not meet the strict standards that I think are needed to make that claim. So I put the moted here. I think it's within, because, why do I say that? Because some individuals did it on their own, or in the control condition, you had 5 individuals, but in the experimental, you had 15. That's not a fair comparison. Where is our study? Our study is here. We could show that it's outside the zone of latent solutions. Now, is it cumulative culture? No, because there was no modification. What the individuals learn in that group is what they learned from the model that we train. In order to call it cumulative culture, they would need to invent a new technique that is more efficient. And that has not happened yet. We are working on it. Well, actually, the chimps are working on it. So stay tuned. Maybe this will happen someday. I told you that chimps and ants are 2 complementary model systems. I told you that it's very difficult to hit the sweet spot for the chimps because they are very inventive. The ants are the opposite. The ants individually cannot do as much as chimpanzees, but together we can do much more, comparatively speaking, to what chimpanzees can do. So combining these 2 is interesting from that perspective. I know that there are some experts on ants in the audience, so I am not an expert. I'm a comparative psychologist, and I collaborate. I'm fascinated by the ants. I collaborate with my colleague, Taka Sasaki, on this project that I'll show you in a minute. But first, I want to show you a paper by him of a few years ago. They had this very elegant experiment where they had 2 conditions in which an ant had to decide which one of 2 nests it would move once their home nest had been destroyed. And these ants, they prefer nests that they have a narrow entrance, that have enough room, and they are dark. Okay, so that's, when they are hunting for a flat, that's what they look for in the ants. Yeah, narrow entrance, enough space, and dark. Probably that's not the flat you would choose, but that's the ants. And then this is given to, they have to decide which one of these 2 nests, or in another condition, they need to decide between 8 different nests. There are 8 different possibilities. And then you ask this question to either individuals, single ants, shopping for a new nest to move to, or you ask it from colonies. And then you see what kind of decisions they make. That's what I just said. Here you see, this is for the individual test. When there are 2 nests, they pick the good nests. But when you have 2 things to compare, yeah, they do a good job. When you have 8 things to compare, they are not so good. Colonies, they are good for 2 nests, but they're also good for 8. So here you clearly see that the colony is much better when the amount of information that needs to be compared is much higher. They are much better at making decisions than individuals alone. So this is perfect, because here maybe it's very easy to get the ants outside the zone of latent solutions. The tricky part for the ants is to present something that they can invent. For the chimps, it's the opposite. Now I'll show you something we are currently doing. Sorry, no data. So I will show you the plan. And in fact, this one is an interesting one because this project was done, it's the Templeton World Charity Foundation that funded this project. And that's what we are trying to do. So I'll tell you how the procedure works. So what we do is we have the home nest, and then there is a sugary solution that the workers want to get to. And then what we do is we put a barrier there. This barrier can be, for instance, light, or it can be some substance, a sticky substance. And in order to get there, they need to overcome this aversion that they have to this barrier. And we can do this by training one individual to overcome this barrier gradually. We can do the same thing with another barrier of a different kind. Now we can train a different individual to overcome a second barrier So instead of, for instance, light, this one is a barrier that is protected by heat. And by increasing the heat gradually, this individual, which at the maximum heat would not cross, they can learn to cross. Okay, so now we have two individuals trained to do two different things. One can cross the light barriers, and another can cross the heated barriers. Then what we do is we combine them into, now you have a bridge that connects the nest, but it's got two types of barriers. So now nobody can cross this one, because you have one individual that can do the light barrier and another one that can do the heat barrier. That's it. So now what we want to see is what these ants do is they engage in a thing that is called tandem walking. What they do is they recruit nestmates. When they find a food source, they will go back to the nest, and then they basically bring them to the place. They don't lay pheromones, they don't lay trails, pheromone trails, so they simply tandem walk with naive individuals and they take them to the source. Our hope is that the models will train naive individuals to cross these barriers. And I can already tell you, yes, this is happening. We've already seen it. So yay, we passed that. So now we have two different models that are training individuals to do two different things. And eventually what may happen is that these individuals may also learn to combine these two things. If one individual now can overcome light, and another one and the same individual can overcome heat, all of a sudden, this becomes an option. And instead of going all the way here for the really high concentrate sugary solution, you can simply take a shortcut. And the shortcut is an innovation. If then that innovation is learned by others, there you have it. The first step to prove that the ants have cumulative culture. So that's where we are. I don't know whether they will do it. I can tell you that some naive individuals have learned the single barriers. And again, stay tuned for more in the future. If this experiment works, what we think it will show is the food location information is transmitted locally. The shortcut is a modification that eventually is transmitted to others. The shortcut improves foraging efficiency. And the pupils now, this is an interesting one, the pupils now know more than their original teachers, because these individuals may know two things while their teachers only knew one. And here, we may see that multiple teachers contribute to the final outcome, and that's why I think the collective thing is very important. Will non-human animals exhibit cumulative culture? It's not been shown yet. I would be surprised if they don't. But it's still an open question. One last challenge. Okay. I've been talking about the technological aspects. Will they also show cumulative culture in terms of norms or fashions? That's even the next step. Even before we have resolved this first step, we're already thinking about the next one. Okay, I'll leave you with that. Okay, thank you very much. Now, before your questions, if you don't mind, I will take 5 minutes to tell you about the Global Research Center for Diverse Intelligence in St. Andrews. I promise you, this one is not an infomercial. Andy asked me to do this. You can blame me for the book one, but not for this. Okay, so I have the pleasure to direct the Global Research Center for Diverse Intelligence with my colleague, Professor Amanda Seeley. And this is something that we are very passionate about. And we are very thankful for the university's support in helping us build this center, and also for the support of the Templeton World Charity Foundation in supporting this center. It is a sister center to the one that you have here. It's also connected, it's another hub with the ones that are in Indiana and also in Princeton. This is us at the center. Yeah, that's the way we dress. That's the way we work. Now, seriously. This is Vulcan's Forge, and it's a picture by Diego de Velázquez. It's a Spanish painter, and if you have the good fortune to go to Madrid, you can find it in the Museo del Prado. I show you this picture not because it depicts us at the center, it's because the name of this picture is the Vulcan's Forge. I see the center as a forge for us. Because one of the things that we want to do is to bring colleagues from different disciplines, put them together, give them time and resources, and make them build something new that nobody's thinking or doing. This is our idea, the key idea for our center. We focus, there are 3 axes that we focus on. We look at, in diverse intelligence, we look at the human, non-human intelligences. We look at the individual, collective intelligence. Also, if you think about the House of Commons, the word intelligence, sometimes I think it's a misnomer, but never mind. And we also look at natural artificial intelligence. Our center is in San Andrews. And what we do, the way it's organized, is different schools in San Andrews contribute members to the center. But also around the world, we are connected with other colleagues and now other hubs. Andy is one of the members of our center, one of our global members. And here you have some of the institutions that are part of this center, connected through scholars that are in these different institutions. So from Scotland to the world. Thank you. And we want to create a space to help our colleagues connect and think. It's not just within St. Andrews, it's also beyond St. Andrews. St. Andrews has a very global attitude. St. Andrews does not look inward, St. Andrews look outward. And that's also our attitude as well. We want to enable our students and staff to do the best work that they can, the best work that we know they are capable. We have members, so we have about 20 local partners. They are distributed in 9 different schools, and you can see here the different schools that they are part of this. It goes from the natural and the technological sciences to the social sciences to the humanities. We cover the full spectrum because everybody has something to say, something to contribute about diverse intelligences. That's why it's very important that we get inputs from different colleagues. We have programmed a talk this semester, which is about intelligence in poetry. Don't ask me what's about, I don't know. We'll find out next semester. Our global partners, we have many global partners across all the other continents. These are some of them. This map is a bit outdated. There are some people have moved to different locations and we have other new partners here, but you get an idea. We go from the Americas, Europe, Asia, and also Australia. And we have partners also in South America, but also in Africa. So I finish with this. We focus on 2 streams of activities. One stream is about research and innovation. And the second stream is about dissemination and outreach. And we do activities devoted to each of those. And with this, I will finish because I want to leave some time for questions. So thank you very much.
Much. Yes, do you have any questions from the room?
Your peanut box, is there an option for them to innovate?
In that one, no. In that one, no.
There isn't.
Very good.
Okay.
Very good.
So what's the next step then?
One where they can innovate. For instance, they can choose a ball that instead of producing 3 peanuts, it produces 6. And will they then distinguish that, say, the green balls are much better than the ones they've always used? Okay. If you think about the people that say, no, they are conservative, they will never do that. That's one of the barriers I told you. I think they will adopt this other strategy that is more efficient. That is one way that we have to do that. But we have thought about other ways of asking the question about innovation. Yeah.
Yeah, Amanda.
That was fantastically interesting. Thank you so much. I might be moving your battle a little bit along. I'm not sure. You can tell me. But Betsy Levy-Pollock, who's at Princeton University, writes about sort of social reference or social norms, the people in a community who are particularly influential in changing social norms. And I wondered if, for example, you might not be able to tell in ants, in the chimpanzee, for instance, do people imitate, learn and innovate, particularly from certain members of a community rather than others? They're particularly influential in that kind of cultural thing.
I'd say the evidence is mixed. Originally, people thought people tend to focus more on dominance. They look more at dominance and they learn more from dominance. And for some time, that was the idea, based on very few studies, by the way. But so maybe 2 studies showing this. Now there is one study showing that they learn from subordinates too. So it's unclear at this point whether they do this. Now there are studies that show that, for instance, there are majority effects. Some individuals tend to learn more from, there are more individuals doing something. They are more likely to copy that than not. And this is not true just about chimpanzees, other species, they also show this kind of effect. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. This was an incredible presentation.
Thank you.
I was wondering about the ant teachers in your sugar water study. Did the teachers ever have the opportunity to be near each other and therefore learn from each other?
When we put them together and we let them go, that may happen. We are going to color code them. So we will know at some point whether one would text the other. We will know that. We don't know at this point, but in theory, yes. During the period where they are being trained to overcome one barrier, we do adjust with a subset. It's not just one, but maybe 5 that can do the light, and another 5 that can do heat. And these are separate individuals. Like you have 2 small groups, but when then you put them all together, now, yes, in theory, they could do that.
So the innovation could be very fast or slow.
Yes, and one thing we want to manipulate also is how many experts you start with.
Yes.
Because that could also, and the nice thing with ants, you can have 10 colonies or 15 colonies, so you can do really nice models about manipulate all these things very, very nicely.
Yeah, still then. Sorry.
That was great. Just very quickly, with the chimpanzees and the kind of peanut vending machine, do they, and talked about this kind of some behaviors are learned and you get this kind of proportional behavior. Do they steal from each other?
Yes. They peanuts, but also balls.
Do they learn the stealing as well? Does that pass as much as the legitimate?
Do they learn stealing from each other? I don't know that. I don't know. There are some individuals that are notorious for stealing. The truth, I cannot, we don't have any data on that. I could only speculate.
This is fascinating. I'm interested in the experiments with the ants. In terms of what the other sort of parameters are. For example, how hungry are these colonies? How long is the lifespan? So generational, because I mean, theoretically, you could see generational change.
Yes.
Second of all, are you sure that this isn't within the zone of latent solution? Like, do you ever get like the really hungry one crossing over with the wind the right direction, getting the smells so that?
Those are very good questions, very good questions. Let's see. Generations, yes, that's one thing we want to try. And we want to see one dream one about generations is eventually it might be that all the original individuals are gone. Will the colony continue to do it even when they're gone? Yes. Another even crazier idea is, would they be somehow, it's a crazy idea, so please don't run away.
I'm an anthropologist.
Okay. Is there some sort of, is there some memory, if there's some collective memory somehow, that even when individuals are gone, that memory still remains somehow encoded in some way that we have no idea. When I said these things to Taka, he looks at me, you're crazy, but I think this is worth.
I think it is because what it is an aversion extinction or aversion lessening, which is different to learning how to operate a device.
Yeah.
It's just overcoming an aversion, which is itself an active behavioral limitation.
Yeah.
So I could see where, for example, there might be a change that would lead to a less averse offspring to that same negative stimulus if that has been extinguished in the adult.
Absolutely.
So I think it's plausible. Because for me, when I'm looking at this is, I'm thinking of other mechanisms that could lead this behavior to innovation.
Let me answer the question about hungry. They are hungry because otherwise they don't move much.
Mm.
Now, is it possible if you make them very hungry, they will just go?
Mm.
It's absolutely possible. That's something that one needs to try. And whether it's outside the zone of latent solutions, it's outside the zone of latent solutions based on the parameters that we use. Now, if you change the parameters, you make them hungrier, then accept it. But very good question.
Important to remember though that the individual workers won't be reproduced. So they can't pass on.
The ant experiment reminded me very much of something that Kevin Leyland and Mike West did that years ago.
Yeah.
Is that some of the inspiration?
They are missing something in that study. I remember reading that
Social
study.
learning part doesn't.
Yes. What that study does is two individuals are doing the dream. One individual has a piece of knowledge, another individual has a piece of knowledge, they put it together. The innovation is not there in a sense, and the transmission. But yes, I remember reading that study and we cited it in the paper.